Let me tell you about the time Thor got into an argument with his most trusted weapon because of his poor decision-making. And before you say Cthulhu, isn't that every time Thor does literally anything? Yes, but this time was special. It all started when Thor came into my library looking for food. He came in today for one reason, to check out food. Because you see, while other gods come to my library to expand their minds, uncover lost secrets, or debate the nature of existence, Thor just wanted a snack. And in his endless Asgardian wisdom, he did something that forever altered the course of his relationship with his most trusted weapon. He put Mjolnir on a scale. Yes, you heard me. He weighed his hammer. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Norse artifacts, let me explain. Mjolnir is not just a weapon. She is a sentient, enchanted war goddess forged from the heart of a dying star. She has crushed frost giants, shattered mountains, and once went through an entire finding herself phase where she nearly joined the Valkyries instead of being swung around by this golden-haired idiot. And today she realized she had made a terrible mistake sticking with Thor. Excuse me. The sound shook the very foundations of my library. Books leapt off their shelves. Scrolls rewrote themselves in terror, and a small sentient bookmark fled the scene screaming. Thor, who was mid-search for a recipe on ambrosial protein bars of the gods, turned around, completely unaware of the cataclysm he had just triggered. Mjolnir floated off the scale, runes glowing with the righteous fury of a war goddess who has just been called too heavy by her long-term battle partner. Did you just? She turned, her voice like distant thunder before a world-ending storm. Weigh me. Thor, in the way only a himbo deity with no survival instincts could, scratched his head and said, Ah. Mjolnir crackled with electricity. I have defeated titans. I have shattered armies. I have been deemed worthy by the gods themselves. And you actual bag of protein and bad decisions just put me on a scale like a common war club. Thor blinked. I was just setting me down on a measurement device. Mjolnir's voice dropped to the chilling calm of a storm about to erase a continent. So what? I'm too much for you now. I'm holding you back. Thor, already in dangerously low IQ territory, panicked. No, you're perfectly dense. Silence. I, Cthulhu, a being of unfathomable intelligence and eldritch wisdom, knew what was coming. I reached for my espresso, leaned back, and prepared to enjoy the show. I'm what? Lightning crashed. And then she left, just levitated away. Right out of Thor's hands, right out of my library, crackling with anger, and flew straight into the arms of a war goddess who knew how to use her. For the next 3 days, storms raged over Egypt like never before. Sand turned to glass. Thunder shook the temples. Thor spent those 3 days throwing out his hand, summoning a hammer that did not return. And then came the note. Dear Thor, Sekhmet lets me burn with divine fury. She doesn't drop me on a scale. She drops me on the battlefield. If you want me back, you have work to do. Mjolnir. And that, my dear listeners, is how Thor learned 2 very important lessons. 1. Never put your sentient warhammer on a scale. 2. If you don't respect your weapon, someone else will. Mjolnir eventually returned. But now, she was no longer just Thor's. Because now, she had options, and that option found its way into Sekhmet's capable hands. But Thor wasn't having any of this, and so he set out on his way to Egypt. Thor stormed into Sekhmet's temple with his usual fanfare. his hair perfectly windblown, his cape billowing dramatically, and his pride as big as ever. He was, of course, immediately tripped up by a sacred offering bowl and crashed into a pillar. Sekhmet and Mjolnir, who had been casually sparring in the courtyard, paused mid-battle, both turning to look at him. Sekhmet, leaning against a spear, raised a single eyebrow, her posture languid yet powerful. What manner of fool storms into my temple like a drunk mountain goat? Mjolnir, floating lazily beside her, smirked. Thor, now sputtering and covered in sacred incense, straightened himself up, pointing dramatically at his former weapon. "I want you back," he declared, his voice thick with the pride of a Norseman. Mjolnir hovered in place, radiating an almost tangible sense of unimpressed wrath. Sekhmet let out a mildly disappointed sigh, clearly unimpressed with this melodrama. "You came all this way just to embarrass yourself." Thor, now fully committing to this petulant tantrum, crossed his arms. "You're my hammer!" Mjolnir's runes flared with divine fury. "Oh," she crackled. "Your hammer, the one you called dense." Thor winced. "Well, I didn't. The one you put on a scale?" Thor's jaw dropped. "I didn't mean." Mjolnir cut him off, her voice like a distant storm. "I have been wielded by gods, by heroes, by mighty warriors who saw my true worth. And you reckless idiot, drop me on a scale like I'm some common tool." Sekhmet, now clearly enjoying this spectacle, raised her chin with a knowing smile. "And now you come to me. How charming." Thor at this point was completely losing his patience. I came to challenge you, Sekhmet. Let's settle this like warriors." Sekhmet tilted her head, flashing a grin full of sharp teeth. "A challenge? You?" Mjolnir, floating next to Sekhmet, practically rolled its eyes. "This will be rich." Thor, realizing that he was not only losing this battle with his former weapon, but also setting himself up for another humiliation, stomped his foot. "You know what? Fine, let's fight." Sekhmet snarled in approval, raising a hand to summon a sandstorm that swirled around the courtyard like an inferno. Mjolnir was ready for the chaos. Thor was already preparing to charge when I, Cthulhu the Librarian, stepped through a glowing portal directly into the center of their battlefield. I raised a tentacle, the very fabric of space and time bending around me as I let out an exasperated sigh. "What is going on here?" Sekhmet paused mid-attack and gave me a wicked grin, clearly enjoying the absurdity of this drama. Mjolnir hovered in place, its runes flashing briefly in guilty recognition. Thor, embarrassed beyond belief, turned around to face me. "Cthulhu." I raised my tentacle to silence him and pointed it at the sandstorm swirling around them. "You're fighting? Over what?" Sekhmet's grin widened. We were just about to get to the good part. Mjolnir crackled with power. "Oh yes, the world will be much better off if we throw a couple of thunderstorms around." I folded my tentacle. "Well, that's just great. Because as it turns out, you all have overdue books." Thor's eyes widened in genuine horror. I summoned a cosmic ledger, flipping through pages with a series of unsettlingly precise, mechanical sounds. "Thor, you've had 15 books overdue, including An Idiot's Guide to Advanced Diplomacy and How to Avoid Making Mistakes in the Presence of Your Weapon." Thor blinked. I was going to return them." "When?" I bellowed. "It's been 3,000 years. You're the worst borrower I've ever had." Sekhmet snorted, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "Sounds like this one's had it easy." "Sekhmet." I narrowed my eyes. You've had the complete guide to smashing things checked out for 1,200 years. She shrugged, still using it. I then turned to Mjolnir, who was now floating innocently beside Sekhmet. And you, I continued, storms, magic, and the physics of divine weaponry. 1,800 years overdue. Mjolnir hummed, avoiding my gaze. I got distracted. Sekhmet laughed. By what? A battle? I could see that this was quickly escalating into an international cosmic fiasco. Enough, I snapped. All of you back to the library. Sekhmet grinned. Even if I win. If you win, I said, you can help Thor reshelve all his overdue books. Sekhmet's grin grew wider. Deal! Thor at this point was miserably staring at the ground, knowing he was about to suffer even more. I turned to all of them and gave my final warning. No fights, no battles, no duels, until every book is returned. And with that, I dragged them all back to the library, much to Thor's protest and Sekhmet's delight. As it turns out, the worst type of conflict isn't war, it's overdue books, and I don't tolerate that. But anyway, after I dragged the war gods and hammer back to my library, and returned my books and my sanity, Mjolnir, in all her hammering wisdom, decided that she needed a break. She didn't want to return to the usual chaos of the gods or the endless responsibilities of being a weapon of divine destruction. Instead, she floated towards the baking section of the library, where a flour-coated chaos was waiting in the form of Croissant Shan. Croissant Shan, the mischievous reality-warping pastry, was in the middle of her usual routine, making cookies. But this wasn't any ordinary baking session. This was a baking adventure where chaos and flour collided. Croissant Shan's pink tentacle hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she was busy decorating cookies with the kind of reckless abandon only a creature of her nature could muster. Oh, hey there, she chirped, grinning up at Mjolnir as she breezed past a mountain of flour. Need a break from the emotional mess? You've come to the right place. We're about to turn this kitchen into a party, I promise. Mjolnir hovered in front of her, the ancient weight of her power still evident. But for once, her tone was softer. I just need something different. I'm tired of the same old battles, same old conflict. Just something where I don't have to be the hammer. Croissant Shan didn't miss a beat. Well, if you don't mind a little chaos, you've come to the right place. Let's make cookies. But I warn you, there's no peaceful baking here. It's all about getting your hands messy and seeing what happens. Without waiting for a response, she handed Mjolnir a rolling pin, the tool looking absolutely tiny in the hands of such a mighty weapon. Croissant Shan handed her a spoon and practically shoved her into a bowl of dough. The trick is to not think too much. Just mix it up, break the rules, and see what falls out. Mjolnir, unsure at first, gave in and began mixing. Flour flew, sugar dusted the air, and to her surprise, it felt good. It wasn't battle, it wasn't fighting giants or slaying monsters, but there was something beautifully chaotic about it all. She could feel a buzzing energy in her, a wildness she hadn't embraced in eons. I think I'm starting to get it, Mjolnir admitted, letting out a low chuckle as she flung some dough in the air. Watching it come down in a glittering shower of chaos, I can't believe I'm actually enjoying this. Croissant Shan bounced around her, her tentacle hair flicking in all directions as she added a generous amount of sprinkles to a batch of cookie dough that she was now shaping into tiny versions of herself, which naturally looked like chaotic pastry versions of Mjolnir's cosmic storm. Oh yeah, we're totally getting it. This is what baking is all about. No rules, No boundaries, just create. Croissant Shan flipped dough onto the ceiling. The sky's the limit. Before long, the kitchen was a complete mess, but it was also filled with laughter. Laughter that Mjolnir hadn't heard in centuries. For once, she wasn't carrying the weight of the cosmos. She was just a part of the chaos, something that had been lacking for far too long, and she was enjoying it. "All right," Croissant Shan said, her bright eyes sparkling as she handed Mjolnir a cookie decorating bag filled with glowing icing. "It's time for the real fun. Let's make these cookies unstoppable." Mjolnir, who had already gotten the hang of chaotic creation, took the icing and began to decorate. What came out of that batch was a collection of divinely inspired madness. Cookies shaped like miniature Thor and Sekhmet and Mjolnir herself, each one decorated with lightning bolts, storm clouds, and battle scars. Each creation somehow reflected the essence of Mjolnir, yet playful, light, and absolutely ridiculous. As Mjolnir finished her latest batch, Croissant Shan, with all the excitement of a child on a sugar high, held up her latest creation, a cookie version of Mjolnir, wearing a little crown. "Look at you, you're a cookie queen." Mjolnir, now fully immersed in the chaos, laughed again, this time genuinely. "Maybe I've been too serious for far too long," she said, her voice light with a kind of freedom she hadn't felt in ages. "I think this is the kind of destruction I can get behind." Croissant Shan beamed. "That's the spirit. You're a natural at this." She handed Mjolnir a tray of freshly made cookies, which had been magically infused with a touch of chaos. "And now, you're one of us." Mjolnir, looking at the colorful cookies, smiled, a rare sight for those who knew her. "You know, Croissant Shan, I think we should start a bakery together. We'll call it the Thunderous Croissant. I like the sound of that." Croissant Shan giggled, wiping some icing off her face. "I'm totally in. We'll be unstoppable and delicious." And so, for the first time in centuries, Mjolnir found herself laughing, creating, and dare I say it, enjoying life in a way that had nothing to do with smashing. Just as Croissant Shan had promised, chaos was the perfect ingredient for freedom. The moral of the story: even the most destructive beings need to take a break, preferably in the form of chaotic pastry madness. This has been Cthulhu the Librarian, signing off as your official scribe for destructive pastries and divine downtime. Until next time, sometimes it's not about destroying the world. Sometimes it's about making cookies and laughing through the chaos. Making cookies and laughing through the chaos.